Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Kizito Musabimana, who is the founder and executive director of the Rwandan Canadian Healing Centre. Kizito, thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here with you, Craig, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, maybe let's just start right at the beginning. Can you maybe describe the Rwandan Canadian Healing Centre and the work that you're doing there?
The Rwandan Canadian Healing Centre is an organization that was established to do work around mental health and work to understand trauma, especially for people like myself who lived through the genocide against the Tutsis in 1994. But also, how do we provide mechanism for healing that are not necessarily the traditional way of doing things? Since then, of course, our organization has grown in supporting other pieces and has other objectives. For example, at the moment, we are running a transitional housing for refugees and newcomers, where we have about 40 to 44 people that are in our building at the moment. We have a community hub downtown, which is a home for other about 11 agencies that call this place home. Because our team works here, but also other agencies in our community that needed a place to call home, find themselves here as well. Um, and then we are also working in looking to develop our village model, which I'm looking forward to discussing with you in our Ubuntu Land Trust and Development entity that was since established, which the Rwandan Canadian Healing Centre is a stakeholder. Among other things that we do, we support other community agencies. We hold events. We have media platforms here where people can come and do podcasts, take photos, you name it. I think what we are trying to do is create a safe space for our communities so they can do what they need to do to build and create a thriving and thriving community.
It seems on the surface, it seems like a long stretch when you say, you're founded to deal with some of the mental health challenges that came out of the genocide in Rwanda, and people like yourself who've been open and speaking about it, to having a land trust and having a studio space where people can come and holding events where people can celebrate. Can you maybe describe how that journey as an organization has gone from the initial idea that you're setting yourself up to help people, and this is now how you've expressed that?
Understand that you have to also understand my journey, and because I personally went through the traumatic experience, not just in 1994, but also when I finally established myself here in Canada. When I was about, this is when 2009, between 2009 and 2012 was my worst year when it comes to my depression, my anxiety. Also, I spent about a year and change looking to commit suicide. So the pieces that we've been able to implement are also things that we've learned, whether it's myself or other people who have gone through those kind of experience. What are the ways to actually recover from those kinds of experiences? The first thing is we all know or we learn is telling stories, being able to share your experience, being able to tell people what you're going through. So it has been important for us to have that component as a part of our organization. So when we talk about the fact that we have media platforms, it's because we want to facilitate storytelling for community members. And of course, for me, my background is film. I went to film. I studied film. I was in the industry for about 7 years. So there is also that piece to it where I'm also able to share some of my skills in terms of creating and crafting stories for our community. So that's how the storytelling piece came to be, and the podcast and the studio piece of our space. In terms of the housing and land trust, we came to understand, or we came to realize earlier on when we established the organization, that we can't just talk about trauma. We can't just talk about PTSD. We can't just talk about mental health and depression without looking at the holistic piece, which is the village. Most of us, when we go through these traumatic experiences, we know it's happening, but we don't know what to do with it. And the reason for that is our economical levels, where we can actually afford to take time off and actually focus on our healing, is at a level where we really can't do that. And I personally believe if you want to really focus on your mental health and be able to heal from some of these challenges that are historical or that are generational, you need time off. You need time from work. You need time from the community. You need to retreat from everybody to focus on yourself. So we understood that housing is a part of it. We understand that economy is a part of it. So it's not just health. Health is not isolated from the rest of the rest of your wellness, if you will. We believe in approaching other pieces that make up your life in order to actually heal, in order to have a moment to yourself to be able to heal. Whether you do that with yourself by yourself or with professionals, or you do that through a more traditional holistic way. You still need to have the mechanism, and the first and foremost is the economies, to economics, and then of course having a place to sleep and having a full day. If you can't talk about mental health if you're hungry. So that's how we've then ended up looking at other pieces. But we've always wanted to come back to the clinical piece, right? For example, at the moment, we're in discussions with a couple of institutions, one which is a government, another which is an educational institution, where we're looking to bring in some of the program we've always wanted to do, which is to do research on mental health, to figure out the different ways to provide healing, but also to gather the information, to gather the data, to gather the tools that are already out there in one place and create a hub of healing. So when our people need help, you don't have to go. Like imagine if you go to a library, if you're looking for a book, you go to a library. In this case, when as a person who are dealing with mental health, when you go to a doctor, you end up going to like 10 different professionals because nobody can figure out what's going on with you. We want to bring it all in one place, in one hub. And so that's something, this is a conversation we're having with those two institutions, and hopefully in the near future we'll be there and we'll be able to finally provide not just clinical support, but also bring in some new tools into the space.
You mentioned you mentioned your experience as a storyteller and a filmmaker. When did you realize, as you were suffering from the PTSD after coming to Canada, when did you realize that storytelling was the key that unlocked some healing?
When I was busy trying to kill myself, it's unfortunate. I think because I had gone to film school. My severe depression and anxiety started actually after graduation. This is when I finally started making money. Now I can do whatever I've always wanted to do. That's when I started getting depressed. That's when I started drinking. That's when I started abusing, marijuana and all of those things. So when did I realize storytelling was part of is a part of what unlocks your healing process? Is there's so many examples, but there is one in particular that always stands out. I used to travel with my friends that I went to school with. This one time we went to New York, and one of my friend was basically telling me, "You've changed. You're different. You don't smile anymore." And this is when I'm thinking I've pretended long enough that I'm like, I'm good. Everybody thinks I'm good. I'm normal, even though I'm dying inside. But she caught it and she noticed. She told me. She had the courage to tell me, because obviously others had seen it, but they didn't want to tell me because they didn't want me to feel bad. Like she had the courage to tell me. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to accept that, the reality of what she was saying, but I knew it. So I left New York. Actually, when we were coming back, I didn't speak throughout. Like we're in the same car. We're like 5 or 6 of us. I didn't say anything because I was just embarrassed. It's when I got back and I started basically sort of looking back and figuring out, okay, how do I do this? How do I tell my friends? How do I say that I've been busy trying to commit suicide, that I'm overdosing on alcohol, that how do I do all these things? How do I tell them that I have crazy voices that can't stop? But I, step by step, one by one, I started talking to them. I told them what was going on. And of course, I could also see that it was connected to my past because I had understood from Romeo Dallaire. I don't know if you know Romeo Dallaire, the general, he was not a general at the time, but he was the head of the United Nations in 1994. He was the head of the UN when they were trying to pull everybody out of the country, but he refused to leave. Canada and Ghana were the only UN soldiers that were left behind. They got to see everything during the genocide against the Tutsis. They got to see people killed. They got to try to help people. So when he came back, he got depressed. He got suicidal. Not just him, the members of his team. So I had already done research on that. I understood what was happening to me, but all of this happened later on. Because initially, I would say when I graduated 2007 to like 2009, I was okay. It went from depression to anxiety. So I'm still trying to do my work. I'm still trying to write scripts. I'm still trying to make movies. I'm still showing up, whether it's on some of the televisions that I worked for or on the sets. But somewhere around 2010, 11, it was horrible. I was just dying. Like I couldn't, this is an example I always give Craig. I couldn't sit and have a meal with someone without having to throw up. That's that's how far I had gone. And this is every day. So if I really wanted to eat, I isolated myself. If I am sitting with whether it's my sister, my brother, or any friends, I had these anxieties that just came from out of nowhere. And all of a sudden I'm running to the washroom to throw up. I'll come back. My veins my eye veins are popped. So my eyes are red. And I'm like, everybody is wondering, am I smoking weed or, because they could not understand what was happening. I couldn't understand what was happening, but I was busy saying, okay, if this is going to continue, maybe I should just commit suicide and get over with it. But once I started sharing my story, and I started doing research, now I'm no longer hiding from myself. All those opened for me. Within like a year or so, I had found a community, a Black community that is the conscious community. Then I learned to be a vegan. From being a vegan, I started reading books on mental health and everything else. Before you know it, I was not smoking, I was not drinking, I was back to being myself. Of course, with that experience, you're never yourself. You become a different person. And that's something that has birthed everything that we're doing now, because it's allowed me to finally become the person I've always wanted to be as a child, which is to build communities. So I decided after that to do a walk from Toronto to Montreal, which I did in the winter of 2016, putting a ricochet and raising awareness on PTSD and trauma within the Rwandan community here in Canada, and the rest is history.
I mean, what you've described is something that I personally can't relate to. And obviously only those that have gone through those horrendous experiences can relate. But do you now see in some of the people that are part of your community, do you now see the signs of that people are going through what you were going through, and you can kind of intervene early the way your friend did for you on that trip to New York?
Yes, and unfortunately, a lot of the times it's difficult to see those things, because as much as I want to build friendships, once you start building, you just get too busy and your friendship narrows, and so you have little time to do that. But yes, because we have members, we have community, we have people that we're serving, so I'm able to see it, and we are able to intervene with for example, some of our residents. We're able to see it when we have community events, and we're able to share it that way. I think one of the challenges for us has been is that we obviously, as much as we've said we want to build a healing center, we want a healing center, we want a physical place, not just a rental place, but our own place. We've not been able to do the clinical work that we've always wanted to do. So there is also, sometimes people are waiting for you to finally get to that place before they can come to you, right? So whenever I have an opportunity to engage somebody who I see that has those signs, I definitely make sure to do so. And I've obviously, for the last 7, 8 years that we've been operational, I've shared my story as much as possible, because I know that even if it's one person that I'm helping, it can go a long way, because it's the difference between life and death. It took me a long time. Obviously, I went through my misery for almost 3 years. But imagine if I can catch somebody one day at just beginning. I've just saved you 2 to 3 years of horror and sleepless nights and days where you're just up, not knowing what to do. You're smoking or you're drinking to ease the pain. So that's why I've been sharing my story. That's why I'm never afraid of sharing my stories, because at this particular point, it's been the only thing I can offer. So why not share it as much as possible?
Well, and you're obviously making a difference. Now, you've mentioned the word community several times. You know, your nonprofit is called the Rwandan Canadian Healing Centre. Are you primarily working with people from Rwanda, or has your community expanded over the years to include other people in maybe the Toronto area or other people from the eastern part of Africa?
We From day one, when we were established, we always understood that we were not going to just serve Rwandans. We named the organization the Rwandan Canadian Healing Centre because that's just where we're from. But the service was always intended to be for any and everybody who went through the same atrocities, challenges, And then we've since expanded from not just genocides, but wars, poverty, discrimination, generational trauma, whether you're talking about slavery, colonization. So I would say right now, in particular, our partners, East Africa, we have a lot of, we have partners from South Africa, we have partners from West Africa, we have Caribbean partners. So we are not specifically just for that particular community that we're from. We are just bringing that experience to the rest of the world in terms of the solutions. But we've never from day one, we've always thought of providing the solution, not just to the Rwandan community, but to all of the communities that have gone through the same challenges that we've gone through.
And you've sort of illustrated how the community can, in addition to the storytelling, community can be a big part of that healing. And so working on some of the other challenges that are there. Can you maybe just expand on some of the things like the land trust or the housing work that you're doing as part of that long-term generational healing?
So yeah, I think, and this is something I realized quickly when we were beginning to take on some activities in the community, that in order to achieve our goal of building a healing center, we needed to build a bridge with the rest of the community. And then as we expanded into these communities, we realized that there was a lack of resources. And so we've done a lot of work to do, not just to build our organization, but also to help build the other agencies and communities around us. So capacity building, training for young and aspiring leaders. Those are some of the stuff we've done. And then around, I think 2021, the Ministry of Housing reached out through some of our partners, and they were wondering if we would be interested in actually participating in the affordable housing solutions, because obviously we, as you know, we're dealing with challenges when it comes to affordable housing across the country, and it's literally a crisis when you think about it. So when the question was asked, the only question we asked them was, if we do this, do we still find a way to build our healing center into whatever solution that we come up with? And the answer was yes.
What is the long-term vision if you fast forward 10 or 15 years for where you could be in terms of the number of people you could be working with and serving?
So for the RCHC, for the Rwandan Canadian Healing Centre, the end vision is to have a place where Rwandans, Africans, Black people, and others who have gone through the same challenges can go and find um, uh, find a belonging, find treatment, find healing, basically have the safe space that are not just hubs like we have, but our communities. I always use examples of right now. If you look at the Tamil community, which is in Scarborough area, or you look at some of the other communities that have their own communities, whether it's the Greek town, the Little Italy, that really is our end goal in the end, because we want to build a thriving community that can bring some of our values and cultures to Canada to advance and create an even better Canada in whether you're talking 100 years from now, 200 years from now. And so some of that is done through RCHC. Some of that is done because of RCHC through entities like Ubuntu Land Trust and our partners. But that's really our end goal. Our end goal is, how do we create environments for people to thrive, environments where we can heal from our lived trauma, but also from our generational trauma.
Positive energy creates positive energy, which can create significant change in not just in the people you're serving, but in the surrounding community, the broader community as well.
Absolutely. We believe, especially again, those who have lived through genocide, whether it's the Holocaust or the genocide against the Tutsis or other genocides, One of the challenge, or one of the things that is difficult to see or to understand is, how do we see these things happen and yet we continue to behave like they never happened, because it happens again and again. And I think what we in a way, part of our vision is to create a world where those things don't happen. How do we do that? Is through these villages, these values, these new understanding that we have because we've lived through these cultures, and making sure that we can actually, as you said, have people go through a healing process and live in communities that are healed, and teach those values to others across the country. Because as one of the thing I love about Canada is you can't be as much as, when we talk about village, sometimes we talk about our villages and people are like, yeah, but you're gonna isolate yourself. There is no way you can isolate yourself in a country like Canada. But at the same time, if you think about it, most communities are villages. Every place you go, you find one community here, one community there. But we always meet. We meet in our workspace. We meet in the supermarkets. We meet when we get out and we get to exchange our cultures. I think what's been missing, especially for the underserved communities, is that whether we are talking about African Canadians or Black Canadians or other underserved communities, is we do these things, but we don't do it in properties and spaces that we own.
I'll ask you two final questions, and then you answer them in whichever order you think is best. The number one is, how do people get involved if they're interested in supporting your mission and pushing this work forward? But maybe the more important question is, how do people in the broader community, if they can identify somebody that is suffering the way your friend identified your suffering, how do they approach them and try to get them some help? What is some best practices in that from your experience?
I love the last question, and I'm going to start with that, which is, I've always told people that I speak to, be careful who you share with. If you're going through a traumatic experience, be careful who you share with. Because some people you can share with, and they would use your experience and your trust to make fun of you. But also find a way to find a friend, whether that friend is actually a friend or a clinician or somebody who is actually going to treat your story with care and be able to advise you. So what I would advise people who see people like that is, just make time, listen. And sometimes all you have to do is say one or two words, which is, hey, there is help. I would like to I'll find a way to talk to the person I used to talk to, who made me laugh, and then leave it like that. Don't insist on doing anything more. Sometimes people make a mistake of saying, oh, you need to do this. You got to go do this. Here's the doctor you need to talk to. Don't do any of that. Just let them know that you see them. Let them know that you are there when they are ready. Or if not you, they can find somebody, but don't insist on trying to fix people. And some of the challenges are impossible for you as a friend to deal with. And that's where you can advise, or you can find a way to support people from a professional perspective. In terms of how people can support, at the moment, we have a few projects on the go. The main project we have is, as I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, is we have a transitional housing program where we're housing refugees. We've taken on a building. We've actually been running it for a year and a month or two now. So that particular program is very, it requires a lot of resources. So if people want to support us in any way possible, we welcome the support, whether it's funding or just any other resource. Or people who want to come and bring some of their learning experiences and support us. Like, for example, right now, there is a workshop that's happening at the Hub with our newcomers. So there's many ways that people can support us on that particular side. In terms of the land trust and development side of things, we are always sourcing for lands. Right now, we have a potential pipeline of 5,000 doors. If they all, this is, we're talking about some sites that are ready now. We're talking about sites that are going to be ready in a year or 5 years. But so far, we have about 5,000 doors, about 18 sites, different sites across Southern Ontario. So if anybody has land and they want to work with us, we are always ready to have a conversation. And then on the other side, Just support RCHC. If you go to rchc.ca, we have a donation page. People can always chime in and support the work we do, whether it's here at the hub or the works that we do in the community.
Kizito, thanks so much, not just for sharing your story, but the broader story of the work that RCHC is doing in support of members of our community that maybe have been going through some difficult times and need a little bit of that support that you've talked so much about. It was a pleasure having you with me here today.
Thank you so much, and it's always a pleasure.
Thank you.